What's up, everyone? My name is Alex, and welcome to my little corner of the internet. I would like to talk about my gender in the abstract. I love the idea of visualizing pretty much anything in an abstract way. I love that for gender. I like that a lot of people experience gender by kind of visualizing like an abstract thing, like, oh, my gender is like the dark void of space. It's like an open, breezy field. It's like the depths of the ocean. There are so many different ways that people describe their gender experience, and a lot of them are abstract, which makes them it makes gender kind of, for them at least, sort of parallel to xenogenders, but you don't have to identify as xenogender in order to use like abstract or flowery language to describe your gender. For me, I explained this in another video. I try not to call back to identity talk because I want this to be a fresh series. I want to treat it like I'm kind of taking a fresh approach, not a new approach, but a fresh approach to my gendered experience. So I try not to call back to past videos from Identity Talk because that was kind of the experimental series. But I did talk about my gender in the abstract, talking about how I visualize the way my gender works. And the best way that I could describe my gender is basically myself at the center, sort of like a core, that is like me, that is what you would consider to be me, like a star or a sun or whatever. And I consider my genders to be two static points that orbit that star, two planets, and occasionally they overlap, but they're orbiting pretty much on the same, plane. They're static, but there is occasionally shifts in gender, or rather days where I feel more this than that. Probably days where one planet is a little more illuminated than the other. One planet overshadows the other. The planets not collide, but overlap. I have days where my male side and my neutroid side kind of like mesh together. They're kind of in line with each other sometimes. Sometimes the male part of my identity is brighter in the sky. It is overshadowing the neutral part. It is more predominant, more just present in my gender experience for a while. And somehow I don't consider my gender to be fluid or like flux in any way. I've never considered myself gender fluid or gender flux, at least not since making this YouTube channel. Years ago, I thought that I was gender fluid, and then I dropped the label. I was like, no, I don't fit the definition for that, and it doesn't fit me, more importantly. But there are still, I guess because it's two static things orbiting, and they don't move, they don't detract or move from their orbital points, I guess. Nothing about that changes. Nothing about their size changes or anything like that. So I think that's where I have it in my brain that they definitely make themselves more known, the two genders, at different times, but I do not consider my gender to fluctuate. I don't consider my gender to be fluid. Basically, it's like an on-off switch, like lights on, lights off. Some days in the on position, some days in the off position, but I guess that doesn't really encompass the experience of both identities overlapping. But that's probably the best way to describe it, statically switching between the two things. Another visualization I like to use is layers of identity it could be like layers as in just like the planet thing, a core at the center and then layers around that, or layers as in bottom to top. And I always consider my malehood to basically be a foundation on which I build my gender experience, my gender identity. No matter what I'm experiencing, the male part of my identity is always present. It's the baseline. It's what I reference back to. I'm feeling more neutral today. How does that fit my intrinsically male experience. So, you know, male as the foundation and layers of like, you know, gender neutral or like labels I use to describe being a non-binary man, layered on top of that like different identities, and probably the outmost layer would be the presentation layer, where I outwardly present as my gender, however I'm feeling, like what pronouns that I want to use, or like how I want to present for that day, names, terms I use for myself, gendered language, man versus person. But I guess the male foundation is probably best described as like the auxiliary gender, kind of like you have auxiliary pronouns. Like if you don't know, just use these. Like it's safe to just assume that these are correct if like you don't know what else to use for me. So using he him pronouns, referring to me as a man, like that is totally okay. And like that's like the safest bet, is just assume that like you can refer to me as a man no matter like how I'm feeling that day or how I'm presenting or what pronouns I'm using. And I guess you can also describe my gender experience as being made up of building blocks. That's another like visualization I like to use. Something static, so just these solid blocks that build on one another to make this one whole identity, but the foundation of that building would be malehood for me. Like that is the absolute unchanging and ever-present part of my identity. That's kind of it. That's probably the best way to describe my gender in an abstract way. Several ways that I could describe like how my gender manifests itself, because some people are more abstract minded. I'm kind of like that sometimes. Like if you describe something to me in an abstract way, I could probably understand it better than if you were to use literal terminology or literal descriptors. I guess it depends on what the subject is, but thinking of gender in terms of colors or feelings or concepts, literal objects, natural phenomenon, that like I love that. Like a lot of people describe their gender in that way, and I love that so much. So I like the idea of experimenting with using different language to describe what I'm experiencing. But yeah, I guess I guess that's it. It feels so weird that these videos are so short, but I guess that was my original idea, was to keep them short and just easily watchable. Like you could like watch a ton of these in a sitting. You could like just play the playlist from the beginning, or you can share like videos with other people, and it's like 10 minutes of just me talking about my experience, because somewhere in that 10 minutes someone is finding something of use to them. Someone is relating to my experience, or they're learning something about themselves or about people who experience being multigender or specifically bigender. So yeah, anyway, I am signing off for now. See you later.